This week on Christian World
I'm
News.
Chris Mitchell in northern Iraq, where a militant Islamic army threatens not only the government, it's targeting Christians.
Plus, the dark side of the World Cup. As fans cheer on their teams, sex tourists are abusing young victims just outside the spotlight. And off the charts, how technology is taking the gospel to places that can't be even found on a map. Iraq's Christians are calling on the global church to pray for their safety. Hello everyone, I'm George Thomas. My colleague Wendy Griffith is off today. A militant Islamist group continues to gain ground in Iraq, putting the country's Christians once more on the defensive. CBN's Chris Mitchell is in Iraqi Kurdistan.
Throughout its Iraq campaign, ISIS has been targeting Christians. That's why many have fled here to the safety and protection of northern Iraq. But many still fear the wrath of this jihadist group. We visited a frightened Christian community just about a mile away from the front lines of the ISIS army. We left the friendly confines of Erbil, heading towards the historic area of Nineveh, now known as Mosul, home to some of Iraq's besieged Christians.
This is the end line. We cannot go anymore.
Our guide, Pastor Majid, brought us as far as the Kurdish army, called a Peshmerga, would let us go. This is about the end of the line if you don't want to run into ISIS. We've been told they control the mountains behind us right now, and a few kilometers down the road, you'd run into an ISIS checkpoint. This is the town called Bartilla. It has about 25,000 Christians in it, but we couldn't find one that would talk to us on camera because they're afraid of retribution. The conditions here are abysmal. There's no water because ISIS has turned it off, and no electricity because the Maliki government has turned that off. They are protected by the Peshmerga, who have set up a perimeter around this town and a few other towns around here. Without that, they know that ISIS would come in and kill most of the people here. They're asking for prayer for Christians around the world, and one Christian leader told me, just like the Apostle Paul asked for prayer, they're asking for prayer that God will protect this town and this region. We talked to one of the house church leaders. On our way back to the Kurdish capital, Erbil, Pastor Majid relays what he said. He told us when ISIS captured Nineveh, they gave Christians three choices.
They are not allowed to open their churches, and even if they opened, they are going to burn the churches. And also the Christians being asked to pay the tax. If not, they can leave Nineveh, and if they didn't left and they didn't pay the tax, they should give their heads.
When you say give their heads, you're talking about being beheaded.
Yeah.
In the midst of this cauldron surrounding them, this church leader sent out a prayer SOS.
Raise up prayers for us. This is what we need. But when man is praying, God is working. So it is important for the churches outside Iraq to raise up prayers and also to fast for the sake of the people of Iraq.
The stunning blitzkrieg by ISIS left thousands of broken lives in its wake. This is one of the many refugee camps set up in the region. This one is just a few days old, and literally within the region, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. This camp is about a 15-minute drive from the ISIS forces, and most of the people here are from the city of Nineveh. And many of the men and women, boys and girls, have seen the worst of the fighting.
I saw people without heads on the street, and people who have been killed in the streets. I saw this with my own eyes. When they got into Nineveh, they entered the houses and killed whole families. They don't care about the ages or the humanity. They only care about themselves.
That carnage drove these people away.
In the region, according to the government, they said there was 100,000 coming to Erbil and 500,000 IDPs across the country. Yeah. But now this is a really serious crisis and a challenge for the whole Iraq. So we, international organizations, are here to support everyone who are in needs in this crisis.
Camp life reduces life to basics. People need water. They clamor for ice. Kids cool off in the 100-degree heat. People fight boredom. Yet they did survive the butchery of ISIS. It's a key time for the region, and especially here for the Kurdish people. They face a historic crossroads and the very real possibility they could declare themselves an independent state. But like the rest of Iraq, they face an uncertain future. While the turmoil has increased, a prayer movement has grown.
In the last couple of weeks, there's been a rise of prayer meetings, even just here in the city. And I get messages and calls of this prayer group, this prayer is going to happen in this house. So it's been happening even in homes. So we're seeing people really start to see God's face for their country. And the prayers are intensified, filled with faith and passion and big prayers.
Each one of us has the role to ask God, as we ask in the Lord's Prayer, let your will be done in heaven as it's in heaven on earth. I just want to encourage our dear brothers and sisters around the world to continue pray for our country in spite of all the demographic changes, the destructions, the wars and whatever happening. God has the final word.
These are the lands of the Bible, the land of Nineveh and the prophet Jonah. And many here also believe this land has a future prophetic promise. In Isaiah 19, it says, Assyria is the work of my hands. Because of the turmoil and fighting, Iraqi Christians are sending out an urgent prayer request to Christians around the world to pray that peace will come to these lands. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Erbil in Kurdish, Iraq.
Thanks, Chris. Excellent reporting from the region. In other news, Islamic militants from Somalia massacred dozens of people in 2 nights of horror at a coastal resort in Kenya. Witnesses say the attackers targeted non-Muslims. At least 48 people died when men carrying automatic weapons attacked hotels and a police station and then sprayed the streets with gunfire. At one hotel, the gunmen forced the women to watch as they pulled the men aside and executed them. Another 9 people died in a second night of attacks. The gunmen went door to door, demanding to know if the men inside were Muslim and if they spoke Somali. The Somali-based terrorist group Al-Shabaab has carried out these brutal attacks in Kenya over the years. By the way, you can read more about the persecuted church and learn how to pray for the Muslim world at our Christian World News Facebook page. Be sure to leave your prayers and encouragement for others to read. Well, good news for a Christian evangelist arrested in Scotland after being accused of homophobic hate speech. Police arrested American street preacher Tony Miano while he was on a 1-week missions trip in January. Now, months later, they've dropped all charges. Mark Martin reports.
Packaging for a loaf of bread or
Former Los Angeles Deputy Sheriff Tony Miano, seen preaching here on a street in London, took early retirement to become a full-time evangelist. Like Scottish authorities, London police also arrested him on similar charges, saying he was arrested on suspicion of offenses under the Public Order Act, accused of making homophobic comments.
They asked me what I was preaching about and if I had talked about homosexuality. I said that I did. They continued their investigation. And at about 4:20 p.m., I was arrested for what they told me was homophobic hate speech.
Okay, I'm arresting you for Section 5 public order. Okay, this is because people have been offended by what you said.
Fortunately, Tony's attorney secured his release with no charge. An investigator came into Tony's cell the same day in London with good news.
What he said amazed me, and I knew it was the hand of God. He said that the inspector has decided to release you with no further action.
In Dundee, Scotland, it took several months after his arrest under hate crime legislation, but police dropped all charges as well. Miano told authorities in Scotland they could see his preaching on video to prove he had done nothing wrong, and his message was one of hope in Jesus Christ. Miano says after watching the video, prosecutors found nothing in his preaching that constituted hate speech. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Denmark's parliament approved a new law that forces the country's churches to conduct gay marriages if asked. Under the new law, priests maintain the right to refuse to officiate the ceremony, but the local bishop must make arrangements for finding a replacement church. Denmark has offered civil unions to gay couples since 1989 and legalized gay marriage in 2012. Coming up, standing up to sex traffickers, the Christian ministry that's saving victims and warning tourists at the World Cup.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
And welcome back to the broadcast. Well, you know this, the World Cup is underway in Brazil. Hundreds of thousands of football fans from across the globe will visit for the month-long competition. Sadly, many of those fans are also sex tourists seeking out women and child prostitutes. But Operation Blessing is on the scene, working to fight this abuse with a new documentary. Charlene Aaron reports.
The World Cup in Brazil is one of the biggest sporting events in the world, attracting more than 500,000 fans. Unfortunately, it is also a huge magnet for sex traffickers, who often target vulnerable children.
I used to seek out girls from out of state, good-looking girls. I would look at their financial situation through pictures and comments online. Then I would talk to them and offer them a better life.
CBN's Operation Blessing is helping fight trafficking through its documentary called One Reel, The Other Side of the Coin. The film cites a government report which states some 40,000 children and adolescents disappear in Brazil every year. 15% of those cases go unsolved.
We're trying to raise the stigma against this and educate the people coming in for the World Cup that this isn't just a service you can buy without consequences, that these are children trapped in a hell.
The film is translated into several languages, and Operation Blessing volunteers are traveling cross-country on a special bus, showing it in all 12 World Cup match cities. Operation Blessing is also delivering food and bags of hope to trafficking victims on the streets of Brazil. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Heart of the World Cup, and in fact other professional sporting events. It's about the thrill of competition, what athletes at the highest level compete. It's the competition for the prize. For many, it serves as an inspiration, including children who can use sports to aspire to higher goals in life. Stan Jeter has this one report from Brazil's notorious slums.
It's a morning like any other in Aglomerado da Serra, the largest slum in Belo Horizonte. And the Eagles team is ready to play. Before the game, their coach challenges players to run onto the field and fight like David against Goliath. It's the final game of a championship organized by Christian ministry Compassion. After the prayer, the ball is in play. And for a time, these young Brazilians can forget the daily risks they face, the violence, drug addiction, and sexual exploitation that surrounds them. Project Compassion, directed by Babel Quinlan, gives these kids extra motivation for survival.
Nós estamos no país do futebol. Na realidade, a gente trabalha uma série de coisas.
We work on a series of issues through this sport. The professors that we have here are trained, they've taken a number of courses, and come from other countries. So we understand that it's a tremendous tool for evangelism.
Compassion chooses the neediest children and youth and offers them education in the arts, languages, music, and of course, soccer. But more than that, it offers them a message of hope.
I like it a lot because they teach us how to use pencils.
I learned to draw geometric designs that can turn into other designs.
The project is rescuing children who otherwise would become drug traffickers or prostitutes, turning them into good citizens.
We not only give these people with all their history, education, sports, discipline, and those things, but we also present Jesus Christ to them. So they'll know that He is the one who will heal their wounds. So they'll have a much broader vision of their future and believe they can leave this reality behind.
Project Compassion partners with CBN's Orphans Promise, which is using music and other tools to fight against human trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children. Today, the Eagles beat their rivals. More importantly, they're winning the battle against the evil that surrounds them. Stan Jeter, CBN News.
Coming up, see how technology is speeding up Bible translation in areas so remote, they're not even on the map.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
CBNnews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, New York.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore. CBNnews.com at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see. I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
Embassy in Washington, Eric Stackelbeck, CBN News.
The source for your news, CBNnews.com.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
And welcome back to the broadcast. You know, there are about 7,000 languages in the world, and Wycliffe Associates is working to translate the Bible into every one of them. As Ephraim Graham reports, the ministry is using modern technology to reach areas so remote they aren't even on the map.
The mission is clear the moment you arrive at Wycliffe headquarters, delivering the gospel to every nation, every tribe, and every language.
A friend of mine says, well, I think that they need to hear from God in the language in which they sin.
Bruce Smith guides that mission. The Regent University graduate is president of Wycliffe Associates.
When they're pleading to God about their desperate situation, about their family, about their physical, economic, political, religious, about all those circumstances, they pray in their first language, they need to hear an answer from God in that same language.
Wycliffe Associates sits here on the corner of John Wycliffe Boulevard and Translation Way in Orlando, Florida. From here, in the last year, the organization has worked with some 3,000 volunteers in some 70 countries to speed up the process of translating the Bible. Many of those countries are quite difficult to reach.
The challenge we face today in the 21st century is that all the easy places are finished. All that's left are the difficult places.
One of the biggest challenges in those difficult places is reliable communication. It's a need that gave birth to what Bruce Smith calls the Bible Translation Acceleration Kit, or BTAC.
We found a whole pool of talent that had been just beyond the horizon for us, ready, willing, and able to be involved in helping to accelerate Bible translation, but not knowing how. So as soon as we started describing this opportunity, they just came flooding our direction. So I pretty quickly had a manpower team that was like a dream team.
That dream team's kit includes a solar panel that generates electricity to charge a battery that then runs a small laptop and internet modem, which connects to the internet by satellite. In just 3 years, the kits have served about 295 translation teams.
Some of the translation teams are telling us that just by having reliable communication, their translation pace has doubled. Okay, this is not because they've become faster translators. It's because all of the delays that were inherent in the system before, waiting for answers to questions, not knowing how to proceed forward, waiting to trade files and get responses back, those delays are now gone.
There is often celebration when the kits arrive in these remote places.
The first team I connected was Kibaku. Second team was Kamwe. Many of these places are not actually cities on a map. They're areas where semi-nomadic people take care of animals, have seasonal farms, these kinds of things. These are not cities of any kind of description at all. And so they may have telephone poles, but the poles have no wires on them.
Volunteers also find comfort in the connection.
So to have the capability, very simply, to connect that computer and communicate with people outside of their local area is a huge personal encouragement to them. Because these are the people that are risking their lives, in many cases, on the roads, unsafe conditions, in areas that are antagonistic to Christianity.
Back at Wycliffe Home Base, this work also helps to open a new door to missions work.
2006, the first baby boomers started turning 60. The last baby boomers don't turn 60 until 2024. So right now, we're in a unique provision, I feel, in terms of God's preparation in the lives of all of these Christians who can contribute to missions and can contribute to Bible translation in a way today that wasn't possible 20 years ago.
Peter Poloni is a retired engineer who helps to assemble the Bible translation kits. He and his wife have been volunteering at Wycliffe for the last 4 years.
It's a tremendous environment, and it gives you much deeper insight into what's going on around the world.
Like a growing number of retirees, Peter escapes the harsh winters back at home in Philadelphia and lends his skills to missions work in Orlando. Coming back next year?
Lord willing, that all dependent on him, our health.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Orlando, Florida.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi! Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
We all want to live in the favor and anointing of God. We want His wisdom to solve problems and His provision for all we need. The Bible tells us the Lord has put eternity in our hearts. Each of us wants the certainty of heaven, to know our lives have purpose and that we are playing a vital role in accomplishing His plan for all mankind.
In Pat and Gordon Robertson's latest DVD teaching, Living Under God's Blessing, you'll discover how to receive wisdom to solve today's problems, the keys to provision for meeting all your needs, and how you can be a part of His plan for the world today. Call now to receive Living Under God's Blessing, featuring the 3-time Emmy-nominated series, Made in Israel.
May God bless you, and may you enjoy and live under the blessing of the Lord always.
Living Under God's Blessing, available now.
Not too long ago, Pacifica Nyatanga was roaming the streets of the African nation of Rwanda, doing almost anything to survive. That's why it's so remarkable that today he sings praises to God for His goodness. Myra Alejandra has his story.
You Are Precious is the tune Pacifique and 2 other former street boys are singing to God today. They have hope and joy they didn't know existed back when they survived on the streets. Pacifique never knew his father, and he lost his mother when he was only 3 years old. With no one to care for him and no opportunity to go to school, he started working at a very young age. By the time he was 8, he was on the streets of Kigali, trying to survive.
How did I get food is like steering things, and my favorite food it was like I took that drugs for to make me free for the sadness.
Pacifique got arrested and put in prison when he was only 8 years old. There, he was beaten and often went days without food. He eventually escaped and went back to live on the streets without much hope for a future. Until Hope for Life Ministry went to the market where Pacifique spent most of his time. Hope for Life was there to rescue street kids.
But me, I was not on the list, but they took me because plan of God to me.
Today, Pacifique's life is very different. For the past 5 years, Hope for Life Ministry has provided food, shelter, formal education, and training for his future career. But more than that, the ministry has shared God's love with Pacifique and his friends, a love that has transformed them forever.
Yeah, I think God has a plan for me. Before in the streets, I was sad, but now there is difference. I'm hopeful for a good future.
Pacifique and 2 of his friends formed a gospel band called Shining Hope. Their first song, You Are Precious, speaks about the joy of knowing God. Myra Alejandra, CBN News.
That's awesome, the transformative power of the gospel. Well, folks, that's all for this week's edition of Christian World News. Until next week, goodbye and God bless you.